The call came on a Tuesday, 6:14 a.m. before the sun, before the bleach. Amara heard the wailing first. High animal tearing through the upper floors like something had been ripped from the house itself. She was already in the kitchen, kettle in hand, when the sound hit her. She set the kettle down. Her fingers were trembling before her mind caught up. She knew. She didn't need the head housekeeper's ashen face appearing in the doorway. Didn't need the words. She knew the way you know when a room goes cold for no reason, when the air changes weight. Kang Jae-won was dead. The estate erupted into controlled chaos within the hour. Black sedans lined the drive. Men in dark suits filled the hallways, speaking in low voices, phones pressed to ears. The kitchen became a staging ground for caterers no one had called yet, but who arrived anyway because that's how power worked. Things simply appeared when the Kang family needed them. Amara moved through it like a ghost. She mopped. She scrubbed. She carried trays. No one spoke to her. No one looked at her. The grief belonged to the family, and she was not family. She was furniture that happened to breathe. By noon, the house was full of faces she'd never seen. Aunt Kang Miri arrived in a black town car, thin as a blade, silver hair pulled back so tight it stretched the skin at her temples. She swept through the foyer without removing her sunglasses, issuing orders to staff who weren't hers to command. Behind her came Kang Seo-hyun, Seo-jun's younger brother, handsome in a restless, unfinished way like a sketch someone hadn't bothered to complete. He leaned against walls. He checked his phone. He smiled at moments that didn't call for smiling. And hovering at the edges, never quite inside a room, but never fully outside it, a woman Amara didn't recognize. Elegant, composed, watching Seojun with the particular attention of someone who used to own something and hadn't accepted the loss. Amara would learn her name later. Yuna, the ex-fiancée. The head housekeeper found Amara in the laundry room that afternoon. Her expression was almost sympathetic. Almost. "The family is making arrangements," she said. "After the funeral week, your position will be reviewed." She paused. "There's no place for you here anymore. There never really was." Amara nodded. She didn't argue. She'd learned that arguing with people who'd already decided you were nothing only proved their point. That night, when the house finally quieted, she went to the pantry. Their place. The shelves still smelled like rice and dust and the faint ghost of his cologne. Something old-fashioned, sandalwood and tobacco. She sat on the crate. His crate. The one that still held the impression of his weight if she looked hard enough. She pressed her palms flat against the rough wood and breathed. That was when she found it, tucked behind the rice bags, folded into a square so precise it could only have been done by hands that had once folded origami for grandchildren. A single sheet of paper. His handwriting, thin and slanting, the pen strokes weaker than they'd been a month ago, but still deliberate. Still him. "Read them my favorite at the funeral. The one you wrote about the persimmon tree. They need to hear it. They need to hear you." J.W. Amara's chest caved. She pressed the note to her sternum and bent forward until her forehead touched her knees. The tears came hot and silent. He'd known. Known he was running out of nights in the pantry. Known he wouldn't get to tell her goodbye. So he'd hidden his last request where only she would find it, behind the rice bags where she left her poems, in the language only the two of them spoke. But reading a poem at the funeral of Korea's most feared patriarch was impossible. She was a housekeeper. Foreign, black. She had no standing, no invitation, no right. Speaking would be an act of defiance so brazen it could get her worse than fired. These were not people who tolerated surprises. She folded the note carefully and slid it into her pocket. She didn't sleep that night. 2 floors above, in the study that still smelled of his father's cigars, Kang Seo-jun sat behind the mahogany desk for the first time. The chair was too big, not physically. His father had been a smaller man, but the weight of it, the decades of decisions soaked into the leather, pressed down on him like gravity had doubled. His father's papers were scattered across the surface. Medical records, legal documents, the sprawling architecture of an empire being transferred from dead hands to living ones. He opened the top drawer. Inside, a sealed envelope. His name on the front in his father's handwriting. He turned it over. No other markings. He broke the seal. The letter inside was short. His father had never wasted words. Seo-jun read it once, then again, His expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes shifted, the way a building shifts before it falls. He set the letter down, pressed his fingers to the bridge of his nose. Then he picked up the internal phone and called the head of household staff. One question. The housekeeper. The foreign one. Where is she? He found her in the pantry. She was sitting on a crate, knees drawn up, a folded piece of paper clutched in her hands like a prayer. Her eyes were red. Her uniform was wrinkled. She looked smaller than he expected, though he hadn't thought about her size before because he hadn't thought about her at all. She looked up when his shadow filled the doorway. Her spine straightened. She didn't stand. He noticed that. Everyone stood when he entered a room. She just looked at him with eyes that were grieving the same man he was. And he realized with a jolt that bothered him more than it should have that she might have known his father better than he did in those final months. He didn't ask her to sit. She was already sitting. He didn't ask her to speak. She spoke anyway. He asked me to read a poem at the funeral, she said. Her voice was steady. Her hands weren't. I wrote it for him. He loved it. He wanted the family to hear it. Seojun stared at her. His father had spoken to this woman, had read her poetry, had hidden notes for her like a conspirator. The absurdity of it collided with something else, something that felt dangerously like envy. My father didn't speak to staff, he said. The words came out colder than he intended. She met his gaze. He spoke to me. The silence between them was a living thing. He could feel the grief in it, hers and his, two completely different shapes, of the same loss pressing against each other in a room that smelled like rice and dust and a dead man's cologne. Prove it, he said. She didn't hesitate. She opened her mouth and recited a Sijo from memory. Not one of hers. One of the classics his father had loved. A 16th century verse about mountains and patience that Jae-won used to murmur when he thought no one was listening. But she didn't recite it in textbook Korean. She recited it in the Gyeongsang dialect, his father's dialect, the one from the village where Jae-won had grown up poor before he'd built everything. The accent Seojun hadn't heard since he was a child sitting on his father's knee. His jaw clenched, his breath held for one beat too long. She finished. The pantry was quiet. You'll stay, he said, not a request. Amara blinked. Excuse me? A scream shattered the silence from above, high, raw, terrified. Both of them moved at the same time, Seojun faster, taking the stairs 3 at a time. Amara behind him, bare feet slapping cold marble. Bo Young's room. The door was open. 2 nurses hovered at the edges, hands raised, helpless. The matriarch stood in the center of the room, nightgown askew, white hair loose around her shoulders. She was pulling at the curtains, tearing fabric, her eyes wide and unseeing. Jae-won, she screamed. Jae-won, where are you? Who are these people? Why are they in my house? Mother. Seojun stepped forward, hands raised. It's me. It's Seojun. She looked through him. Get away from me. You're not my son. My son is a boy. Where is Jae-won? Where is my husband? The nurses moved in. Bo Young swung. A water glass shattered against the wall. Seojun caught her wrist gently, holding her arms while she thrashed, his face rigid with a pain he would never name. Amara pushed past the nurses. She knelt. Right there on the floor in front of the most feared matriarch in Korea, amid broken glass and torn curtains, she took Bo Young's hand, the one Seojun had just released, and she held it. Firm, warm. And she began to recite the persimmon tree poem. Softly, in Korean. The words she'd written on a napkin in the pantry while an old man corrected her line breaks with a pencil stub. The persimmon doesn't bloom in spring when blooming's easy. It waits for frost. It sweetens in the cold. Bo Young went still. Her breathing slowed. Her wild eyes focused not on Amara's face, but on her voice, on something in the rhythm that reached through the fog and found a thread still connected to the world she was losing. J1, Bo Young whispered. Her hand tightened on Amara's. Amara's throat closed. No, grandmother, she said softly, but he sent me. Bo Young's fingers relaxed. Her head drooped. She let herself be guided back to the bed, let Amara pull the blankets up, let the words keep coming, low and steady, until her eyes closed and her breathing evened out and the room was quiet again. Seojun stood in the doorway. He hadn't moved. His hands hung at his sides, fists loosened now, and his face held an expression Amara had never seen on him before. She couldn't name it. It was something between awe and fury and grief so deep it had no bottom. "She calms for you," he said. His voice was rough. Amara stood. Her knees ached from the glass. She ignored it. "She doesn't know who I am. She just knows the poem. She knows enough." He stepped into the room. The doctor said the crying response might be gone. The dementia, the medications, they flatten everything. She hasn't wept in months, hasn't reacted to music, to photos, to any of it. He paused, and you walked in and she grabbed your hand like you were a lifeline. Amara looked at the sleeping woman. "I'm just a maid." He shook his head once. "Not anymore." The deal was struck in his father's study an hour later. As Seojun sat behind the desk, Amara stood across from him because he hadn't offered her a chair, and she wouldn't have taken one if he had. "You stay," he said, "not as housekeeping, as my mother's primary caretaker. You read to her, talk to her, keep her calm." He slid a folder across the desk. "In return, your sister's tuition is covered. Full ride, 4 years. You move from staff quarters to the family wing. My security team handles any external problems." "External problems," she repeated. "Meaning what?" "Meaning half the people in this house want you gone by morning. Aunt Mireille has already called 3 times demanding I fire every foreign staff member as a security precaution. My brother thinks you're a spy. The head housekeeper told me you should have been let go months ago." He leaned back. "Staying here will make you a target. And you're offering protection out of kindness. I'm offering protection because my father asked me to." His gaze was steady, unreadable. "And because my mother held your hand like she hasn't held anyone's in months. I protect what helps my family. Right now, that's you." Amara studied him. No warmth in his face, no charm. Just cold calculation meeting raw need, exactly the expression he'd worn in Bo Young's doorway. "One condition," she said. He raised a brow. "I speak at the funeral. Your father asked me to." "That's not negotiable." His jaw tightened. "That will make enemies. I already have enemies." She lifted her chin. "At least this way I'll have earned them." For the first time, something shifted behind his eyes. Not warmth, not yet, but something adjacent to it. Recognition, maybe. The faint acknowledgement that the woman standing across from him was not what he'd assumed. "Deal," he said. She took the folder. That night, Amara moved her things from the basement staff room to the family wing. It took one trip. Everything she earned fit in a duffel bag and a plastic grocery sack. The new room was larger than her entire apartment back in Maryland. A real bed, not a cot. Windows that faced the garden instead of the parking structure. And in the closet, 3 dresses. Simple. Her size. No tags, no receipts. The housekeeper who showed her in delivered the explanation with barely concealed disgust. "Mr. Kang thought you might prefer not to wear your uniform all the time." Amara ran her fingers over the fabric. Soft cotton, clean lines, nothing flashy. Quiet, expensive thoughtfulness. She hated how much she liked it. 3 days before the funeral, the first threat arrived. It was slipped under her door sometime between midnight and dawn. A single sheet of white paper. No envelope, no signature. Block letters in black ink. "Speak at the ceremony and you won't leave the building alive." Amara stared at it for a full minute. Then she walked to Seojun's study, barefoot, in the robe she had found hanging behind the bathroom door, and set the note on his desk without a word. He read it. His expression didn't change. He folded it once, placed it in a drawer, and looked up at her. "Then we make sure you leave with me." The days before the funeral moved in a blur of tension and preparation. The estate became a fortress. Security doubled. Guest lists were vetted and revetted. Florists, caterers, clergy, all screened through S.A.O. Jun's personal team. The ceremony would be held at the Kang family's private memorial hall, a building that seated 300 and had its own panic room, because of course it did. Aunt Mirai escalated. She convened an emergency meeting of the family council, 4 elderly men and 2 women who'd survived decades in the Kang orbit by knowing when to nod and when to look away. Her petition was simple. The foreign housekeeper had no standing to address the gathering. It was inappropriate. It was a security risk. It was, she said with a delicate pause that carried the weight of a sledgehammer, an embarrassment. Seojun overruled her with two sentences. My father requested it. The discussion is over. Seo-yun made his contribution at dinner. He sat across from Amara, spinning a glass of soju between his fingers, and smiled. A maid reading poetry. At our father's funeral. He shook his head. This family has become a joke. Seo-jun didn't look up from his plate. Speak again and you'll eat in the kitchen. Seo-hyun's smile froze. The table went silent. He didn't speak again. But the worst blow came from further away. Amara's phone rang at 11:47 p.m., the night before the funeral. Unknown number, American area code. She answered because her sister sometimes called from friends' phones when her minutes ran out. The voice on the other end wasn't Esh's. Baby, said a woman she hadn't heard from in 7 years. Amara. It's Mom. The word hit like a fist to the sternum. Mom. As if the woman had earned it, as if she hadn't walked out of a rental apartment in Baltimore when Amara was 16, taken the emergency savings, and left a note on the kitchen counter that said, I need to find myself. I'm sorry, be good to your sister. I saw you on the news. Diane continued, some Korean broadcast. You were in the background of a photo at that big family's house. The Kangs. She laughed, nervous, impressed. Baby, I always knew you'd make something of yourself. Amara's hand tightened on the phone. I need help, Diane said. Just a little. Your stepfather left and the rent is due, and I thought maybe now that you're doing so well. Amara hung up, set the phone face down on the nightstand, pressed her palms flat against the mattress, and breathed until the shaking stopped. She didn't sleep. The funeral arrived with gray skies and the smell of chrysanthemums so thick it coated the back of her throat. 300 seats filled. 300 faces carved from stone or carefully arranged into appropriate grief. Black suits, black dresses, black cars lining the road outside like a funeral procession for the funeral procession. Amara stood in the anteroom behind the stage, wearing the simplest of the 3 dresses Seojun had provided. Black, straight, ending below the knee. No jewelry, no adornment. She held the poem in her hands, written on a single card, though she'd memorized it weeks ago. The card was for her hands. They needed something to hold. Through the wall, she heard the murmur of the crowd. The program listed 7 speakers: Seo-jun, Aunt Mirai, Seo-hyun, 3 business associates, and at the end, listed only as family tribute, Amara Osei. Seo-jun appeared in the doorway. He wore a black suit that fit him like armor. His face gave away nothing, but he paused when he saw her, and something moved behind his eyes. Ready? He asked. No. Good. Neither am I. They walked in separately. He took the front row. She sat in the back near the exit per his security team's instructions. If anything went wrong, she was 15 steps from a reinforced door. The speakers went one by one. Seo-jun spoke about duty and legacy. His voice didn't waver. Aunt Mirai spoke about family honor. Every word pointed at someone, probably Amara. Seo-hyun spoke too briefly and sat down before the audience could register how little he'd said. Then the moderator called the final tribute. Amara stood. The walk to the podium took 12 seconds. She counted them. By the 3rd step, the whispers started. By the 7th, someone near the back laughed, low and disbelieving. By the 10th, Aunt Mirai's face had turned to marble. By the 12th, she was there, behind the microphone, facing 300 people who did not believe she belonged. She looked at the coffin. Dark wood, polished, draped in white cloth. Somewhere inside was the man who sat on a rice crate at midnight and told her that her line breaks were sloppy, but her heart was perfect. She opened her mouth. The first syllable landed in Korean so clean, so precise, that the whisper died mid-breath. The accent was Gyeongsang, his accent. The one from a village none of these people had ever visited because they'd been born into the empire he'd built after leaving it. The persimmon doesn't bloom in spring when blooming's easy. It waits for frost. It sweetens in the cold. There was a man who sat in a kitchen and taught a stranger that kindness doesn't need a common language, that patience is a form of love, that fruit tastes truest after it has survived the worst season. She didn't read from the card. Her eyes stayed on the coffin. Her voice didn't break. Her hands didn't shake. She finished. Silence. Not respectful silence. The kind of silence that happens when 300 people realize simultaneously that the person they dismissed, the maid, the foreigner, the one they looked through, understood the dead man better than any of them. Bo Young moved first, sitting in the front row, clutching a framed photo of Jae-won. She'd been still throughout every other speech, vacant, lost in the fog that had swallowed more of her every week. But now her lips trembled. Her hand reached forward. A sound escaped her, low and broken, the kind of grief that predates language. Again, she whispered. Read it again. The room heard it, every seat. The acoustics carried Bo Young's shattered whisper like it was the loudest thing ever spoken. Amara's throat burned. She looked at the old woman's outstretched hand and felt something crack open in her chest that she'd been holding sealed since the pantry. She recited it again, softer this time, just for her. Bo Young wept, not delicately, not the way powerful women cry in public, controlled and photogenic. She wept like a dam breaking, like the months of medicated emptiness and confused mornings and the forgetting her husband's face all came crashing through at once. She wept because the poem gave her something the doctors and the medications and the family couldn't. It gave her back her grief. And grief meant she still remembered. And remembering meant he wasn't gone yet, not all the way. Seojun sat beside his mother. He didn't touch her. He didn't move, but his eyes were wet, and his jaw was locked so tight a muscle jumped in his cheek. And when Amara finished the second recitation and stepped away from the podium, he watched her with an expression that had nothing to do with cold calculation anymore. Afterward, the crowd filed out in stunned, murmuring clusters. Amara made it to the hallway before her legs gave. She pressed her back to the wall, shaking. The composure she'd carried to the podium dissolved like sugar in rain. A jacket settled over her shoulders, heavy, warm, smelling of cedar and rain. As Hyojin stood beside her, he didn't ask if she was okay. He could see she wasn't. You made my mother cry, he said. She started to apologize. Don't. His voice was low, rough at the edges. She hasn't cried since the diagnosis. Not once. The doctor said the emotional responses might be gone permanently. The dementia, the medications, they flatten everything. She hasn't reacted to music, to photos, to home videos. Nothing reached her. He paused. You reached her? Amara pulled the jacket tighter around herself. He looked at her. The hallway was empty now. Everyone else had moved to the reception. It was just the two of them and the faint sound of chrysanthemums being cleared from the memorial hall. You gave her that back, he said. Then quieter, you gave me that back too. She met his eyes. The air between them shifted. Not romantic, not yet. Something rawer. Two people standing in the wreckage of the same loss, recognizing for the first time that the other one was real. The moment broke when his phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen, expression hardening. Then he showed it to her. A news alert. A photo of her at the podium, mid-recitation, face luminous with grief. The headline screamed across the screen. Mystery Black Woman. Speaks at Kang funeral. Who is she? Amara's stomach dropped. By morning, it was everywhere. The first attack came 48 hours later. Aunt Mary didn't bother with subtlety. She filed a formal petition with the Kang Family Council to have Amara removed from the estate immediately. The grounds were clinical, precise, and devastating. Cultural incompatibility, undue influence over a mentally compromised elder, potential exploitation of a grieving family for financial gain. The petition cited Bo Young's dementia diagnosis, Amara's foreign status, and what Mireille called the spectacle at the memorial service as evidence that the household had been destabilized by an outsider with unclear motivations. Seojun's legal team pushed back hard, but the family council was split. 3 members sided with Mireille, 2 sided with Seojun, 1 abstained, waiting to see which direction the money blew. Before the council could reconvene, Diane arrived in Seoul. She came with a camera crew. Not a professional one, a freelance reporter and a guy with a phone on a gimbal who'd been tipped off by someone. Probably Diane herself. She stood at the estate gates in a dress she couldn't afford, dabbing tears that arrived on cue, telling anyone who'd listened that she was a mother separated from her daughter by circumstance and cruelty. I just want to see my baby. she said into the lens. I don't know what these people have done to her. Why won't they let me in? Security blocked her, politely, firmly as Hyojun's orders. The footage aired that night. The headline read Maid's mother claims estrangement. Who is Amara Osei really? Amara watched it on her phone in the family wing, stomach churning. The woman who'd abandoned her at 16 was standing outside the gates of a Mafia compound, performing motherhood for strangers, and the internet was eating it up. Her phone buzzed. Seo Jun. One line. Don't watch it. Come downstairs. She found him in the kitchen, past midnight, the house asleep. He was leaning against the island counter in a black t-shirt and sweatpants, hair pushed back, tablet open in front of him but ignored. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. The circles under his eyes were dark enough to bruise. Your mother, he said when she sat across from him. Tell me. She left when I was 16, took everything in the savings account, left a note. Amara's voice was flat, controlled. She didn't call on my birthday, didn't come to my high school graduation, didn't respond when I emailed her about Ash's acceptance to college. 7 years of nothing, then she sees me on Korean television and suddenly she's a grieving mother who misses her baby. Hyojun listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said, I'll have legal send a cease and desist by morning. It won't stop her. Then we'll find what does. They sat in silence for a while. The kitchen was warm. The house creaked and settled around them like a sleeping animal. My father's letter, Seojun said abruptly. She looked up. She'd been wondering about it since the night he'd found her in the pantry. He reached into the tablet case and pulled out a folded sheet, placed it on the counter between them. She read it, J1's handwriting, weaker than in her note, but still deliberate. The letter was short, 3 paragraphs. The first was about the company. The second was about Bo Young. The third was about Amara. She is the only honest thing in this house. Don't let them destroy her the way they destroyed your mother's spirit. She is stronger than she knows. She is braver than you are. Protect her, or you are not my son. Amara's vision blurred. Seojun's voice was rough. I spent my whole life trying to earn words like that from him. He gave them to you after 3 months in a pantry. She looked up. That's not what this is, I know. He met her gaze, but it's still true. And he was right. About all of it. He paused. I failed my mother. I watched her disappear into that fog and I threw money at it instead of sitting with her. Instead of talking to her. Instead of being what she needed. You didn't fail her. Grief isn't failure. He looked at her. Raw, unguarded, the armor gone for the first time since she'd known him. She reached across the counter, pushed the hair from his forehead. A gesture so intimate it surprised them both. He caught her wrist, didn't pull it away, didn't let go. The kitchen went very still. He leaned in. She didn't move back. The kiss was slow, inevitable, tasting of cold tea and exhaustion and months of grief compressed into a single point of contact. His hand slid to the back of her neck. Hers curled into the front of his shirt. The world outside the kitchen, the councils and the cameras and the dead man's letter, all of it went quiet. Bo Young's alarm shrieked from upstairs. They broke apart. Ran. Her room was empty. The bed rumpled, the monitoring bracelet alarm screaming from the nightstand where she'd somehow unclasped it. The window was open. Night air poured in, cold, carrying the scent of the garden below. Seojun's voice went lethal. Lock the perimeter. Now. Security mobilized in seconds. Amara didn't wait. She grabbed a coat from the hallway hook and ran out the side entrance, barefoot on the gravel, scanning the dark grounds. She knew Bo Young. She knew where the confused mind would go, not away from the house. Toward something familiar. Toward the garden, where J1 had kept his persimmon trees. She found her 3 blocks past the estate wall, at the edge of the narrow road that ran along the river. Bo Young was in her nightgown, bare feet on cold asphalt, standing under a street lamp and calling for J1 in a voice so thin it barely carried. Amara knelt on the pavement in front of her. The asphalt bit into her knees. She took Bo Young's hands. They were ice cold. She recited the poem, softly, in the Gyeongsang dialect, the rhythm steady as a heartbeat. Bo Young went still, her wild eyes focused. She looked at Amara and something flickered. Not recognition exactly, but something deeper. Trust. The body, remembering what the mind had lost. Don't leave me, Bo Young whispered. Never, Amara said. Seojun's car screeched to a halt behind them. He was out before the engine died. He saw them on the ground, his mother in a stranger's arms, calmer and safer than she'd been in his house, surrounded by nurses and security, and a son who'd built an empire but couldn't keep one old woman from wandering into the dark. His throat worked. He didn't speak. He knelt beside them on the coal road and put his arms around both of them and stayed there until the headlights of the security team's vehicle swept across them like searchlights. Back at the estate, Bo Young asleep again with Amara's hand still in hers, Seojun stood in the hallway. Amara came out of the room and closed the door softly behind her. This can't keep happening, she said. I know, she needs full-time specialized care. A real team. Not just me reciting a poem and hoping. I know that too, he paused. But she doesn't want specialists. She wants you. Amara looked back at the closed door. I'm just a maid. You stopped being a maid the moment you sat on a crate in my father's kitchen. The next morning, Seojun proposed. Not a real proposal. Not yet. He laid it out in the study with the same precision he used for business negotiations. Flat voice, clear terms. No emotion visible. Though his hands told a different story, he kept them flat on the desk, pressing down. A public engagement, he said. Announced formally, it controls the media narrative, gives you legal standing as family, which blocks the institutionalization threat and Mireille's petition. It protects my mother's care arrangement and your position in this house. Amara sat across from him. She'd taken the chair this time. And when the storm passes, then you're free. His voice roughened on the word. No obligations. Eshi's tuition stays covered. You walk away clean. She studied his face. The man who kissed her in the kitchen 12 hours ago was somewhere behind those walls. But the walls were up now, reinforced, and she understood why. He was protecting himself the same way he protected everything else. With structure, with terms, with distance dressed up as generosity. Fine, she said. But I have a condition. Another one. I handle my mother. Personally, she meets me on my terms, not through lawyers and camera crews. He hesitated. She's dangerous, Amara. Not violent dangerous, manipulative dangerous. She'll find your soft spots and press them. I know exactly what she is. Amara's voice was steady. I've known since I was 16. The engagement announcement came 2 days later. Press conference at Kang Group headquarters. Amara in a simple black dress, the same one from the funeral because she hadn't asked for anything else and wouldn't. Ring. A thin band with a single jade stone, Bo Young's favorite gem. No diamond, no spectacle. Seojun's hand rested on the small of her back as the cameras flashed. His touch was light, professional, performative. She felt it burn through the fabric anyway. The spokesperson read the statement. The audience murmured. Seo Hyun sat in the back row, phone beneath the table, thumbs moving. He was texting someone, and the slight smile on his face had nothing to do with congratulations. That afternoon, Amara met Diane at a cafe in Itaewon. Neutral ground, public enough that nothing could escalate beyond words. Diane looked good. She always looked good. That was her talent, the surface. Perfect braids, borrowed designer bag, tears ready in the wings. Baby, she started. Amara set a folder on the table. Inside, bank statements showing the emptied savings account. The note from the kitchen counter, photographed and dated. 7 years of unanswered emails, printed, time-stamped. Documentation of every lie Diane had told the Korean press in the past week. You left when I was 16. Amara said. You took the savings account. You never called on my birthday, not once in 7 years. You didn't come to Esha's graduation. You didn't answer when she was hospitalized with pneumonia her freshman year. You appeared the moment a camera pointed at my face and saw an opportunity. Diane's smile faltered. Baby, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. Amara leaned forward. If you contact me again, if you sell another story, if you show up at those gates with so much as a phone camera, this folder goes to immigration, to the IRS, and to every outlet that published your crying mother routine. Every receipt, every lie, every year of silence documented. Diane's face went pale beneath her makeup. Amara stood. We're done. She walked out. She didn't look back. In the taxi, her hands shook, but they shook less than they used to. While Amara handled Diane, the real threat was moving. Park Dae-ho, the rival underboss who'd been circling the Kang Empire for years, had found his opening. Through intermediaries, through Seo Hyun's jealousy and Mirai's fury, he'd assembled a coalition. His ultimatum arrived through lawyers the same evening. Declare Bo Young mentally incompetent, institutionalize her, transfer controlling shares of the Kang family trust to a conservatorship board that Daeho's people would dominate. If Seojun refused, fabricated evidence tying Amara to corporate espionage would be released to the press and the prosecutor's office simultaneously. Seojun read the document once, set it down, looked at his head of security, tell him to try, but the damage from inside came first. Seojun's security team traced the leak of Bo Young's medical records to a single device, Seo Hyun's phone. The confrontation happened in the study, door closed, voices not raised, which was worse. You sold your family, Seojun said, for a seat at someone else's table. Seo Hyun's composure cracked. You chose a maid over your own brother. I chose loyalty over ambition. You should learn the difference. Seo Hyun was cut off that night. Access revoked, accounts frozen. He left the estate with one suitcase and drove straight to Park Dae-ho's compound. And then the worst night came. Bo Young's episode started at 3 a.m. Amara heard the crash from the connecting room and was on her feet before she was fully awake. She found Bo Young standing in the center of her bedroom, a shattered vase at her feet, blood on her palm from a shard she'd grabbed. But it wasn't the confusion that destroyed Amara. It was the recognition, or rather the absence of it. Bo Young looked at her and screamed. Not the scared, searching screams from before. This one was hostile, terrified. Who are you? Get out. Get out of my house. I don't know you. Amara knelt. Grandmother, it's me. It's Amara. I don't know that name. Get away from me. Guards. Someone. There's a stranger in my room. Amara recited the poem. Softly, steadily, the way she'd done a dozen times before. It didn't work. Bo Young kept screaming, backed against the wall, threw a pillow, then a book, then the framed photo of Jae-won from the nightstand. It hit the floor and the glass cracked across his face. Amara sat on the floor amid the broken glass and the broken photo and began the poem again, from the beginning, her voice shaking now, tears streaming. But she kept going because she didn't know what else to do. It didn't work. Bo Young raged until the sedative the night nurse administered took hold, and then she slumped against the headboard, eyes glazed, muttering words that weren't words anymore. Seokun found them like that. Amara on the floor, surrounded by glass, face wet, still whispering the poem to a woman who couldn't hear her. Bo Young, sedated and slack against the pillows. He knelt beside Amara, didn't speak, didn't touch her. Just knelt there until she stopped reciting, and the silence filled the room like water. Later, the hallway. 4 a.m. I can't save her, Amara said. Her voice was hollow. I thought I could. I thought the poem was enough. But she's slipping. Every day there's less of her. And tonight she looked at me like I was the threat, like I was the thing she needed saving from. Seojun leaned against the wall beside her. Their shoulders almost touched. You're not supposed to save her, he said. You're supposed to love her. There's a difference. Amara's breath caught. When did you learn that? About 10 minutes ago, watching you sit on the floor and keep trying when there was no reason to keep trying. She turned her face toward him. In the dim hallway light, his eyes were unguarded again. That same crack in the armor. Wider now, permanent. Stay, he said. Not because of the ring, not because of my mother. Because I love you, because I've loved you since you sat on a kitchen floor and kept reading to a woman who couldn't hear you anymore. She pressed her forehead to his. Didn't answer, but she didn't let go. 2 days later, Park Dae-ho made his final move. Emergency board meeting. Documents filed to remove Seo-jun as head of the family. The evidence was a masterwork of fabrication, doctored photos, Seo-hyun's sworn testimony, Diane's paid interview, freshly recorded despite the threat, claiming Amara was a con artist who'd manipulated her way into the household. Financial records twisted to suggest embezzlement. It all hit at once. Board meeting at 9 a.m. Bo Young collapsed at 9:47. Paramedics at 10:15, hospital by 11. Amara rode in the ambulance with Bo Young, holding her hand while the machines beeped and the medics worked and the city blurred past the windows. At the hospital, they separated her from Bo Young for the emergency assessment. She stood in the corridor, back against the wall, the same position she'd held 100 times now. Waiting, always waiting. Her phone buzzed. Seo Jun. At the board meeting, fighting for the empire while his mother fought for consciousness. She didn't wait for him. She called his lawyer directly, told him to come to the hospital with a secure laptop. When he arrived, she opened the encrypted folder she'd been building for weeks. Quietly, methodically. Every night after Bo Young slept, Amara had been compiling bank transfers from Daeho to Seo Hyun, emails between Daeho and Yuna discussing stock manipulation, Diane's original agreement with the freelance reporter, including the payment amount, screenshots of Seo Hyun's texts pulled from the estate's security backup before his access was revoked. She'd told no one, not even Seo Jun. Release everything, she said, every outlet, tonight. The lawyer stared at her. This could destroy multiple people publicly. It'll drag the King name through. Good, said Seo Jun from the doorway. He'd come straight from the board meeting, tie loosened, face drawn. She dragged my family through worse. He looked at Amara. She looked back. Something passed between them that didn't need words. His father's letter had called her the only honest thing in the house. J1 had been right. She hadn't just been honest. She'd been paying attention. The evidence broke across every major outlet by midnight. Daeho's financial network exposed, Seo Hyun's betrayal documented in his own words, Diane's manufactured grief dismantled by receipts. The board meeting collapsed. The petition was withdrawn by morning. Daeho's empire began its slow public disintegration. Aunt Mireille arrived at the hospital at dawn. She stood in the doorway of Bo Young's room and watched her sister-in-law sleeping with Amara's hand in hers, the heart monitor beeping steady, the poem folded on the nightstand. She said nothing for a long time. Then she turned to Seo Jun in the hallway and said, "Your father was right about her. It wasn't warmth, but it was surrender." Bo Young woke that afternoon, groggy, confused. But when her eyes found Amara sitting beside the bed, something flickered. Not full recognition, something older than memory. "Where is my daughter?" she said. Her voice was thin but clear. Seo Jun blinked. "Mother." The girl, Amara. The one who reads to me. "Where is she? I need her." "I'm here, grandmother." Amara squeezed her hand. Bo Young's fingers tightened. "Then she's already family." She looked at Seo Jun with eyes that were, for one impossible moment, completely lucid. "Stop being stubborn about it." Seo Jun's throat worked. He looked at Amara across his mother's bed and didn't try to hide what was in his face anymore. 3 weeks later, on a quiet evening in the estate garden, Seo Jun knelt in front of Amara beneath fairy lights. Someone had strung through the persimmon trees. Bo Young sat nearby in her wheelchair, a blanket over her lap, watching the fireflies with a faint smile. That might have been memory or might have been peace. It didn't matter which. No grand speech, no audience. Just him on one knee, holding a ring he'd had made from the jade stone of the first band and a new setting, something permanent. "You came into this house to scrub floors," he said. "You ended up holding it together. I don't have a poem. I'm not my father. But I have this. I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never scrub another floor, never eat alone, never have to fight without someone beside you. Marry me. For real. For good." Amara looked at him, at his mother, at the persimmon trees, whose fruit sweetened only after the frost. "One condition," she said. He almost smiled. "Of course. I still read to your mother every night, even when she doesn't remember, especially then." "Yes," she said. Bo Young, from her wheelchair, clear-eyed for one perfect crystalline moment, said, "Finally. Took you long enough." The wedding was small, warm, held in the estate garden under the same fairy lights, because Amara had asked and Seo Jun had learned by now that when she asked for something, it mattered. Blended traditions, a Korean bowing ritual, Ghanaian kente cloth woven into the hem of Amara's white dress, a quiet nod to roots she'd never abandoned, even when the distance stretched to oceans. Seojun in a black hanbok with clean modern lines. Bo Young in the front row, lucid enough to smile, to clap, to whisper beautiful when Amara walked past. No press, no rivals, no ghosts. Amara read the persimmon tree poem as her vow, the same words she'd written on a napkin in a pantry, the same words she'd recited at a funeral, the same words she'd whispered on a cold street at 3 a.m. to a woman who couldn't remember her own name. But spoken here, in this garden, to this man, to this family she'd built from nothing but honesty and stubbornness and love, the words meant something entirely new. Bo Young cried again, but these tears were warm. Afterward, in the quiet of the reception, Bo Young tugged Amara's dress. Her eyes were bright, focused, present in a way that came less often now, but burned brighter each time it did. "Can I call you that?" she said softly. "Daughter, for real." Amara knelt. "You already have been, in here." She pressed her hand to Bo Young's chest, right over the old woman's heart. "And now out here too." Bo Young hugged her, tight, fierce, with more strength than her frail body should have allowed. "I love you, daughter. I love you too, grandmother." Seojun watched from across the garden. He didn't hide his tears anymore. That night, they stood on the balcony. Seoul glittered below, vast and indifferent and beautiful. Bo Young slept inside, the poem folded on her nightstand where she could find it every morning, even on the days she forgot why it mattered. Amara leaned against Seojun's chest. "We made it. We did." She looked up at the sky. "I used to think powerful people only took things. Turns out the most powerful thing you gave me was a crate in a pantry and someone who listened." He turned her to face him. "And you gave my family back its heart." They kissed under the quiet Seoul sky. Slow, certain. The kind of kiss that doesn't need to prove anything because everything has already been proven. Somewhere in the city, headlines had already moved on. Scandal faded, empires shifted. But here, in this small pocket of light above the noise, a black maid who'd once knelt on a cold kitchen floor at 5:30 a.m. stood on a balcony wearing jade on her finger and a dead man's poem in her heart. And the most feared family in Korea called her daughter. It all started with a poem, a kitchen, and an old man who believed a maid could hold his family together. He was right. Hi, lovely viewers. Thanks for watching till the end. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, leave a comment, and click on the notification bell for more exciting stories.